Imagine this. You're holding a long futures position in a certain stock. The trade is going in your direction. You want to add more to your winning position. You click on the buy and suddenly you see a message like this. Forget adding more to your winning position, but doing so can actually lead you to a penalty of nearly 1 lakh per day because you have exceeded the base delta OI, which as per the new regulation is not allowed. Sounds confusing? Stay with me in this video. I'll help you understand what the new delta-based OI regulation is, what is allowed under the new regulation, what is disallowed, and what attracts penalties. Delta-based OI or open interest is a fairly new phenomenon, and your understanding of what this is super important, especially if you're a derivatives trader. Otherwise, the penalties can be quite harsh and it can significantly impact your P&L. As of December 6th, 2025, the exchanges have changed the way open interest is calculated from a notional open interest based system to delta-based open interest calculation. The delta-based OI is fairly simple and intuitive, but only if you understand what delta is, what the properties of delta is, and of course what open interest itself means. First things first, let's deal with delta. Delta is primarily an options Greek, or in other words, it is one of the sensitivities of an options contract. The delta is a number ranging from 0 to 1, indicating the change in option premium for every 1 point change in underlying. Technically, delta cannot be 0. It can be really close to 0, but not 0. We will not get into this detail as to why, but it's good for you to remember that delta is a non-zero number. Let's take this example to understand what delta means. The stock price of Infosys is 1,594 per share, and the 1600 call option is trading at Rs 25.9. A quick look at the option chain tells me that the delta of 1600 call option is 0.51. Assume Infosys moves up by 10 points. Then all else being equal, the new premium will be old premium plus the change in delta, which is 25.9 plus 10 into 0.51, which is equal to 31. Of course, if instead of going up, if Infosys were to fall down by 10 points, then the premium would come down proportionately. The delta of a call option is positive and ranges from 0 to +1. And for put option, the delta ranges from 0 to -1. The delta table is a useful tool to quickly estimate the approximate delta range for any given option. Going back to the Infosys example we discussed a little earlier, Infosys spot price was 1,594 and we were discussing the 1,600 call option. We know 1,600 is at the money option, and from the delta table, the delta of an at the money call option should range between 0.45 to 0.55, which is what we got from the option chain as well. The delta of a out of the money call option ranges between 0 to 0.4, depending on how out of the money the strike is. The delta of in the money call option ranges between 0.55 to 1, depending on how in the money the option is. The same thing holds true for put option as well, except for the sign change. Now think about this. What is the delta of a futures contract? Well, future mimics the spot. For every 1 point change in spot, the future contract changes by 1 point. It will not change partially like an options contract. Hence, the delta of a futures contract is fixed to 1 and it does not change at all. I hope at this point you have a fair understanding of what delta is. I now want to shift focus to two important properties of delta, and for that, let's take an example. Assume you have the following open positions. Long Infosys 1,600 call option, 1,600 being the at the money option. Long Infosys futures. What do you think is the delta? Well, the 1,600 call option has a delta of 0.51. Futures has a delta of 1. So the total delta is 1 plus 0.51 equal to 1.51. Let's extend that example. long Infosys 1600 call option, long Infosys futures, short 1640 call option, which is slightly out of the money with a delta of 0.29. But remember, we are short, so delta is negative 0.29. The negative sign here indicates that we are short. The total delta is 0.51 plus 1 minus 0.29 equal to 1.22. Let's just take one last example. Long Infosys 1600 call option, long Infosys futures, short 1640 put option, which is in the money, delta of negative 0.71. But remember, we are short, so the delta is negative of negative 0.71, so that makes it positive 0.71. The total delta is 0.51 plus 1 plus 0.71 equal to 2.22. Here are the two important properties of delta to note. Long positions across call and put is indicated with a positive sign and short positions with a negative sign. Delta across the same underlying same expiry can be added up, or in other words, delta is additive in nature. With this, I hope you have a basic understanding of what delta is and its properties. Now, let's quickly understand what open interest is. In the traditional sense, OI or open interest represents the number of open positions in the market. For instance, assume there are only two market participants in the market, you and me. You short one futures of Biocon and I go long on one futures of Biocon. OI here is set to be 1. Now assume you short another contract and a third person comes along and goes long on Biocon. The number of open positions is now set to be 2. Open interest is basically the number of such open positions in the market. So far, so good. We've first discussed delta and then briefly discussed what open interest is. I guess we are now at a good to understand what delta-based OI calculation is. Traditionally, a security gets into ban period when the OI hits 95% of market-wide position limits. Market-wide position limit is 20% of non-promoter free float available in the market. When a security hits the ban period, you're only supposed to reduce your exposure or bring down the OI, or completely close the position. The idea was to nudge traders to close their positions up until the OI drops to 80%. Starting 6th December 2025, there were a few changes. The major change is in the way OI is calculated. They transitioned from an open position based OI to delta based OI. A security now gets into ban period when the future equity OI hits 95% of market-wide position limits. Now here is the most interesting bit. What actions can you take assuming you have an open position in a security and the security enters a ban period? Well, the answer to that depends on something called as the base open interest, which is calculated at the time of security getting into the ban period. Let me stick to the Infosys example to explain this. Assume Infosys gets into a ban period while trading at 1594 per share. Assume I have the following positions at the time Infosys moves into the ban period. Long 1600 call option, delta being 0.51. Long 2 futures, delta of 2. Long 1640 call option, delta of 0.21. Total delta here is 2.72. Now 2.72 is my base delta. Note it's positive 2.72. As per new rules, if the security enters ban period and if I have an open position, then things I can do are as follows. I can take positions in such a manner that the base delta reduces. I need to ensure the sign of the base delta remains the same. Of course, I can also choose to do nothing and let my positions stay the same way. If I do anything else, there is a penalty applied, and that can range from a minimum of rupees 5,000 per day to a maximum of rupees 1 lakh per day until the ban period is lifted. For instance, going back to the example, I cannot add 4 short future position. Let's see why. Just to recollect, my existing positions are long 1600 call option with a delta of 0.51, long 2 futures with a delta of 2, long 1640 call option delta of 0.21. To this, if I add 4 short positions, then the 2 long futures will get offset and 2 new future shorts are created. Hence, the total delta will be long 1600 call option which has a delta of 0.51, long 2 futures which has a delta of 2, long 1640 call option which has a delta of 0.21, 4 new short futures delta of -4, total delta of minus 1.28. This is not allowed as it changes the sign of the base delta from positive to negative. Now, what if I want to add 3 lots of 1540 out of the money puts? Let's say 1540 has a delta of -0.19. Let's quickly revisit all the deltas. Long 1600 call option, delta of 0.51. Long 2 futures, delta of 2. Long 1640 call option, delta of 0.21. To all these existing positions, I'm now adding 3 long put options 1540 with a delta of -0.19 each. Therefore, the new delta after adding up all the deltas is 2.15. This is acceptable since there is no change in the sign and the overall delta even after adding new positions has reduced from 2.72 to 2.15. The new delta-based OI is introduced on the basis that this is more efficient in terms of managing market-wide position limits. That said, there is now a greater onus on you as a derivatives trader to be fully aware of what delta-based OI is and how it can impact your positions. You also need to be aware of edge cases where things can spiral out of control. Let me illustrate by continuing the previous example. We were long 1600 call option delta of 0.51, long 2 lots of futures delta of 2, long 1640 call option delta of 0.21. Remember, we added 3 long put options 1540 delta of -0.19. The new delta we arrived at was 2.15, which is also your new base delta but from the next trading day onwards. But the day I add the new positions, imagine moments later Infosys stock price falls by 100 points, falls from 1594 to 1494. When this happens, the deltas change intraday. The 1600 call option delta will be close to 0.1. 2 long futures will remain the same, delta of 2. 1640 call option delta will be close to 0.05. The 3 new put options that I just bought will quickly transition from out of the money to in the money and the delta moving close to about 0.95. The total new delta of all the positions is -0.7. Notice, the delta not only reduced but the sign changed, which is not allowed as per the new rules. Of course, your action was to reduce the OI by being compliant with the exchange rules, but the stock plummeting after you adjusted the position is outside your control and is considered a violation. Unfortunately, this will attract a penalty, and I hope you never get stuck in such situations. Just one more thing before I wrap this up. Let's say you have a spread position. For instance, long at the money call option and short out of the money call option, which is a classic bull call spread. If the security enters the ban period, you will either do nothing or you exit both the positions. Partial exit here means you have changed the sign of your base delta, which is a problem. I know this may all sound very complicated, but that's how derivatives are. It is a complicated product, and hence understanding derivatives thoroughly is needed even before you attempt to trade it. I understand you may have a lot of queries. Please do comment and let me know. I'll try to address them. Good luck and happy learning.